Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find it most convenient to listen to the Bonfire. I, as always, am Alan the Pole with the goal. That goal is still for job applications, and honestly, there are some people in this organization known as the Chicago Fire Football Club that should also be looking at job applications. I'm also joined by my lovely jubbly co-hosts, DJ.
I can't imagine who he's talking about with that statement.
And Tim.
Hey guys. Hope everyone did something fun on Sunday that wasn't just the Fire game because
I actually finished a Dungeons and Dragons campaign we've been running for like 2.5 years or something, and it was a like 7 hour long session. So that was fun. I was watching the game as the session was going on, and I slammed into the table several times because of that game. And my friends were like, "Alan, stop."
man,
All
your
right.
reaction was significantly greater than mine.
Yeah, no, it's like no, many reactions. All right, let's get right into the news. There's not too much news, and it's not really new news. It's some stuff that we've been talking about, but it's basically confirming the United States Olympic roster has been put out. It does feature two Fire former homegrowns in Gaga Slonina and Georgi Mihailovic. They will be heading on to Paris, though we won't be seeing two current Fire players of Brian Gutierrez and Chris Brady going. You know, it's at this point it wasn't unexpected, still disappointing considering how the two have been playing. I guess it's fitting for the Fire's season, I guess.
I mean, that's kind of the problem with the Olympic roster is it's 18 people. That is
plus
small,
4 alternates, which is like only 4 people smaller than like most tournament rosters, but yeah, I don't know, like if it were up to me and it's not like the U23 age group is also just weird because it's like you're getting people that are a lot of them like becoming valuable to their clubs, and yet it's not a senior tournament where they have to be released, and so that's weird. That wasn't the case with Brady or Gaga, or sorry, with Brady or Guti. They both were just not asked to join. But frankly, I think it really would have been a discussion, because it overlapped with League's Cup and stuff like that, and if the team is going to do something interesting that like fans can latch onto this season, like that sort of looks like it could be the opportunity for them. So it's difficult to like let your starting goalkeeper and one of your best playmakers go. But hey,
Yeah. So
And I think it's also kind of worth noting that soccer at the Olympics is kind of one of those. It's a lot like the Youth World Cups in that you get a lot of good moments, but 99% of the time it doesn't do anything, which that kind of factors in is it worth letting Guti or Brady get injured in Paris just for, yeah. Which to me kind of makes me say, I'm not upset that they weren't picked. I am upset for them, but
though I guess the argument could be made that the Fire season is effectively over. Well, I mean, depends who you ask. Probably 99.999 repeating percent of fans agree that it's kind of been like over. So letting them two go and just keep going on and without them would have been just fine. So I guess.
well, yeah, but again, like League's Cup, it's an entirely different tournament. Like everyone starts in exactly the same place. It would be overlapping with it. Like the Fire are in a very winnable group with Sporting Kansas City and Toluca. Um, and it's a group that they really have they should have every hope of advancing out of. Um,
True.
And like you're right, like on the men's side, like the quality of the game in the Olympics is not that great. I do almost wish that they just dial the age down somewhat, just because if it was like a U19 tournament or something like that, where you were getting players that were more like up and coming, you might get a little bit more excitement around it, I think, but whatever.
Yeah, unless we get the Miracle on Ice soccer edition, I don't know what can make it exciting.
this basically also goes back to the IOC's traditional view of amateurism, which soccer is one of the few sports left in the Olympics where it's like you have this level of amateurity, which both is existent and not existent because a lot of these guys are genuinely professionals, but they're still trying to keep it amateurish, and it's a bizarre thing the way they handle it, but you're dealing with FIFA and the IOC, and they're trying to do 70 different things at once.
I feel
Yeah,
like it's a very
that's
similar thing in hockey as well. Like the question of like why not let more NHL players join stuff like that.
well, and they did participate in full for a number of Olympics, and I think that was sort of the expectation. So it's not really so much the amateur thing; it's just that the negotiations between like the various federations, FIFA, and the Olympic Committee, it just wasn't going to be a major tournament. It wouldn't surprise me for it to become more like the men's side on the women's side soon. Like now for women, it's still a major tournament. Um, but it's at a weird time of year. Like nobody really wants to stop for it. It's like not a big enough tournament to like get everyone to stop and watch. And the other thing is like if you're in charge of like FIFA or UEFA or CONCACAF or whatever, y- like soccer is one of like 10,000 different things going on at the Olympics, and like your thing is soccer, so like you want to make it its own thing, sort of like the Euros or Copa America. You don't want to be just like one of many things going on at once.
Yeah.
This kind of goes into a point that I've been thinking of for a while, which is also the Olympics kind of are going downhill in terms of popularity. But that's a topic for
Yeah,
another
and for
day.
another podcast, honestly.
No, I will get my Olympic
All right,
rants
we'll
in.
get them in as the Olympics get going on in. Though there's one more piece of news, a possible transfer rumor that has sort of surfaced up. DJ, you've mentioned.
Yes, Sheridan Shaqiri may be going from the Germans to the Greeks.
Mm.
So, because Switzerland got knocked down on Sunday, now there is some rumors going around that Panathinaikos in Greece are possibly interested. We know Shaqiri has been targeted by a few clubs, and the Fire are very much open to letting him go. But this is kind of the first time where we have, I think, an actual club being listed. So, and that Greek place, they're not a terrible team that if he could go to. They would actually probably offer him a decent amount. Maybe not the entire amount he's making here, but decent enough. And if he goes to Panathinaikos, he will be playing with Eric Palmer Brown. So a weird little connection.
All right.
That's sort of funny. Yeah, it's the article that came out listed it as quote being difficult. Um, the Fire would let him go without a transfer fee, so that isn't the concern. It's just right now Shaqiri's slated to make $4 million or so, give or take, ballpark. Between now and the end of the year in MLS, he'd be taking a pay cut, and I think the question is like how much of a pay cut? Because when you transfer, you kind of start over with a new contract, a new deal. Um, the Fire can't really pay him that money and let him go without using a buyout, which currently, as we talked about last time, they don't have. So it's a difficult situation.
Yep. Difficult situation. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
In this ever evolving saga that is the 2024 Chicago Fire Football Club. All right. Let's talk about the game that happened on Sunday, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because it was just unfortunate. I tweeted out basically as the game happened. One of the analogies that I used in the past few games was the strides. Like you go from baby steps to strides to like sort of a running pace, and I basically said that what just happened now is them tripping over their own feet and falling face first on the concrete. Essentially, because this we all expected this to be a possible jump that could lead to, first of all, more points and more, I guess, confidence going into now what is a really difficult spot before the League's Cup. And that just did not happen. So it's a bit of a shame. I mean, a few things were different for this game. One was that we didn't see Frank Klopas since he got that red card in the last game. So the assistant coach, Paulo Nagamura, was at the helm for this one. We saw Mueller at right wing back. We saw Alargoni at left wing back. So a bit different, but for the first like maybe 5-10 minutes, you could see why San Jose are the bottom team in MLS. And I was like, okay, this is why San Jose is the bottom team of MLS. First 15 minutes, nothing really happened, and all of a sudden, San Jose were like if you weren't to tell me that this is the bottom team in MLS, I would have been like, oh, they look like an actual team. And the Fire looked like they went back to square zero since Frank
the Fire
Klopas.
did not look like an actual team. Like,
no.
I think it's one of those things where it's like much more of that than it was the Fire.
Oh yeah, no. It like legitimately looked like the Fire have stepped back to square zero, essentially. There were several chances that the Fire, if they were, I guess, a competent team, could have capitalized on, including the San Jose goalkeeper making 2-3 errors that could have definitely been capitalized on, but they weren't. So it was those kind of moments, and then unfortunately, of course, the Fire did concede the lone goal, 49th minute, with Hernan Lopez just slipping behind, players just losing themselves essentially, and yeah. No, difficult. It was definitely a difficult game, and of course,
it felt like the Fire just never really woke up for it.
No.
Right?
And
Like,
in the moments where you feel like they've woke up, like when Kuipers was able to put the rebound off of a Barlow shot that hit the bar, you know, we thought 1-1 game, just make it a tie or something like that, and then they show the replay and it's like, no, that's clearly offside, you know, and yeah.
And stuff like those offsides, like they happen when you're not dialed in, you're not focused.
Like I said,
It's odd. Now, like I don't know exactly where you want to place the blame here. Like there's certainly enough to go around. Like the one thing I guess you could say in terms of positives is like the Fire didn't allow a penalty kick. On the other hand, like to be honest, the San Jose Earthquakes were not playing like a team that could have earned a penalty kick. Like I don't think that they really like this is a game the Fire lost much more than it was a game the Quakes won. And like I'm not trying to be like, disrespectful to what they did. I thought Hernan Lopez had a pretty solid game. Like he looked like a good high quality MLS player, and we don't talk about him very much because he plays for the San Jose Earthquakes. But like for the most part, like the Fire didn't really show up at all, and the Earthquakes showed up a little bit. So that's I think what made it so disappointing because it did feel like, to use your analogy, like the Fire were starting to get some things together and they were starting to like, you know, maybe get ready to like get into a little bit of a trot after some walking and some stumbles, but nope.
yeah. And like you mentioned, this was definitely more of the Fire losing than San Jose winning, because San Jose very much a lot of the time showed why they're the bottom team in MLS. They were making very simple mistakes. But unfortunately, there was a lot more individualism from San Jose that showed up that just swept past what the Fire had both as a team and individually. I feel like San Jose used the quirk that we had in the past few seasons where we are able to take teams to our level, and that's exactly what San Jose did. They just brought Chicago back to their level, or what basically square zero I've been mentioning, and they were just able to slip past that. If it was another team, they definitely would have won or maybe drawn, but this is the Fire we're talking about.
Not even being able to walk out of San Jose with a point is probably the biggest summary.
Also,
of the season.
first clean sheet of the season for San Jose.
Yeah. The fact that all three of us had predicted at least 3 goals.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. And like, and there were so many goals in the matches that happened on Saturday in MLS. And I'm like, oh man,
exactly.
This is one of those things where it's like the goals all happen Saturday and on Sunday, like no one's going to score.
Yeah. And then I don't know. And it was even watching the game was kind of just weird from a lot of aspects. First of all, the pitch was, what was it? Like, it was just dirt at like some parts of the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, water restrictions in the Bay Area, right? Like that,
Yeah.
and they are more than willing to, like, you could tell PayPal Park is sort of weird because like pretty much around the entire field, there's no, like, the stands just stop 15 feet in the air because there's pitch side luxury boxes all around the entire perimeter on both like the along both touch lines. Not the goal lines because they don't really, those aren't fully developed, but and like you do that because you want to make money with your building, right? Like they make money, they look bad on TV, they kill the atmosphere, but they don't care, and they've been allowing concerts at PayPal again because it just is like you
It's
can sort of tell.
it's very
Yeah.
similar to Bridgeview, honestly. What's also similar to Bridgeview is that they have they had like two supporter sections essentially, like one on each side. It looked very similar to like the Harlem end and the north and the south end. So
I was
weird.
very curious because there were a ton of empty seats. I wanted to see what the official attendance was reported as, and I mean, sometimes these things take a while to come up. Usually, when the number isn't great, but so far we're more than 24 hours after the game kicked off as we're recording, and the attendance has not been reported. So
I think some teams just don't report it. Period. I don't know why.
it ends up coming out from one or a couple different sources.
Yeah.
MLS likes getting it out in the long run because it's data that like sponsors factor in with different
Of
things,
course.
which is part of why sometimes when you see like 1,000 people in a stadium, you'll be like, oh, attendance was 18,000. You're like, what? It's because it helps with those sponsor numbers sometimes.
Of course.
But yeah.
Yeah, and this essentially was a game that happened. And now when you look at the next few games that are happening, which you have a team of NYCFC who are like essentially middle of the East and are doing all right for themselves, and then next thing you know, you're playing against two of the best teams in the league right now, both away. So you're not like there's not much going to be picked up there, and I can't remember who said it, and we'd be surprised if we get even a single point out of these next 3 games, honestly.
Certainly when you can't beat the team that is in the like possession of the wooden spoon pole position, um you shouldn't be expecting to beat a team that's like fourth in the East or third in the East, or I mean, on top of the supporter shield standings or chasing that team, which is the next two teams the Fire are playing after NYCFC. But yeah, I mean, uh, just a couple things to point out, like about this match. I thought that it was smart to play Chris Mueller at a wingback position. Um, he didn't have a great game. Now, like, it's his first time playing for that position with the Fire. I don't know if he did it elsewhere. Like, he didn't really play a lot. Um, when he was in Scotland, which is one of the reasons that he came back. I don't think that that's where he played in Orlando, but he may have played in there at that position at some point. But so I don't want to be too harsh either way because that wasn't recent experience for him. But it didn't look very convincing. He wasn't able to get back and basically fulfill his defensive duties. Now it was a very good long ball that that set up Hernan Lopez to get the goal. But neither Mueller nor Suke were able to track back. They were the two closest. Um, Mueller almost did it and kind of had like a half-hearted like slide. I know I'm not going to get this, in the box. But I'm not sure if we'll be seeing this again. I honestly wouldn't hate the idea of the Fire trying playing him a wing back again because he's an expensive player on the roster overall. He's talented. He hasn't felt like the same guy since coming back from the injury this season. Like he's lost a little bit of that speed. And if you can come up with a role that he doesn't just have to be on the bench, I think that like benefits the team, obviously. But maybe it's a learning curve thing. But more performances like this would make me change my tune on that very quickly.
Tom Barlow keeps coming onto the pitch, and I guess this was the closest he's gotten to actually. There were so many times that the Fire social media has posted like highlights or clips using the "this close" emoji, and I was like, if this close counted as goals, we would be in a very different place. And it comes to differential and just wherever we are in terms of league position, like this close doesn't win us stuff. And unfortunately, Tom Barlow is, I feel like, the king of this close. Like he had, I think, like at least 2 opportunities where he was either like 1-on-2 or just 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper, and they just either went wide or nowhere.
Yeah, the joke is close counts and horseshoes and hand grenades. But so I did ask Paulo Nagamura, because he was filling in for Frank Klopas with Klopas suspended for the match, about what he thought, and if he thought that the substitutes, which was Kutias, Barlow, and Herbers, brought what he wanted from the match. He said he thought they did. He said that he came in and had a couple chances. Now, I think that you're right, where it's like when a coach says, he had some chances, the follow-up is like, so how'd those chances go? And every time that the ball ends up at Tom Barlow's feet, it seems like he really hasn't been able to connect with it the way that he wants. It like
Barlow reminds me a lot of David Ashakian,
oh,
but without the self-importance of giving himself the number 2.
yeah. I mean, I was gonna go Kiwi Messi with it, but that's fine.
I was also
Messi has scored.
He had a lot more chances. Or like Kasper Shabilko, it's sort of funny that as soon as it seems like the Fire always have one player in a forward position where you get them in, and it doesn't matter how close they are to goal, they will find a way to miss. And Kasper Shabilko had that I don't know, job mantle. Is it some kind of like magic boot or something like that makes it impossible for these guys to score? And it was just like passed on, it seems, to Tom Barlow this season, because he wouldn't be a professional soccer player at his age if he had consistently done this.
Yeah. It's just frustrating. And Jiggly shared their article that they wrote a while back titled "I Don't Know." And that's sort of how we feel, or at least I feel like we keep proving everyone right when it comes to this cycle of we start we don't do well. We find some sort of stride. We win like a few games or even go undefeated. And then we're like, hey, we can go somewhere from this. And then we just essentially find a new rock bottom. And this cycle, with both this team as well as honestly other Chicago teams, it's not just Fire fans that are feeling it. I feel like everyone's feeling it. I think there was like this graphic that was showing that this season, like this and last year calendar season, is the worst in Chicago sports history. Of course, they don't add the Fire because a lot of people still forget that MLS exists. But yeah, it's everyone. Everyone's feeling that. So it's not just us, it's everyone. Just
Everyone in Chicago, right? Like some people are experiencing joy with sports somewhere in the world. But I believe that the Fire had 29 points by this same stage in the season last year. So 21 points is less than 29. I know, throwing math at people.
hate math.
Yeah. So yeah, that's less. It's a smaller number, and like right around this time was, we're getting towards the end of like what was that like promising summer streak where the Fire won 5 matches out of 6, and the closest that we got to that 5 wins out of 6 was like 4 undefeated in a row, 2 of which were wins and 2 were draws, and then like interrupted and then a win. Like it seems like a smaller bump, like the high is not as high as it was last year, and it seems like that right now it just seems like things are not really at a place where they will be getting considerably better.
Yep. And this, like what I mentioned with other Chicago teams, does it come from like the management in terms of like coaching? Does it come from the general management who's at like the sporting director? Does it go all the way up to the owner? And for two teams and very specifically owned by the same person, we can definitely say but yeah, no. This is a bit of a struggle bus right now. So, unfortunately, apologies for the unenthusiasm, I guess, right now. Life's just weird right now, honestly. Even with this fire loss, apart from it, I'm in that weird transition between graduating and finding a job, so it just feels weird.
Yeah, it's a weird time.
It's weird.
It honestly like this season is just I think the problem is like if you had to like put describe this season in a color, it would probably be like brownish gray. Like if it was a temperature, it would be like the cooler side of tepid. Like it just has
Yeah.
just been blah. Like it,
The only thing that's keeping it
Beige.
beige. The only thing that's keeping
off
it
beige.
yeah, yeah. But the only thing that's of course keeping it from being a complete like darker color than that is maybe just the return to the red jerseys, the men in red technically being back, I guess. That's one thing that's sort of being like, at least we look nice while we're losing.
I mean, there have been some fun moments, right? Like we just had one of them.
Oh, 100%.
Like the last week, like come from behind 4-3 goal victory. Like that was cool. Like 7 goals in a match is always going to be fun. It's more fun when your team wins.
Twice in a season, of course.
Twice in a season when it hadn't happened in 2 decades for the Fire. Like that's cool. Now you only get a come from behind victory when you're behind, and like like
No, you have to do something when you're behind, which is what they didn't do against San Jose.
right. But it even then it was like a sort of like the Fire had been searching for a win against Montreal. Like they sort of like were in a position where it felt like they needed to start pushing for more points. Things got a lot worse. They got a little bit better. And then the 4-3 win, it just never really felt like, okay, like other teams, the narrative is always maybe this is the victory that galvanizes the squad and it starts to be the trend of something. And I think that you heard a little bit of that from some people before the match against San Jose. I don't think a lot of people expected that to actually happen, and it turns out it didn't, right? Like
Nope.
that 4-3 win was just this thing that happened, then disappeared into the night. And then, a couple of days later, the team was really playing like they had no idea how to win a soccer game against the worst team in the league.
I unfortunately jinxed it. I know in the last episode I said a bunch of stuff about San Jose, so I guess I jinxed it. Apologies on my end. So I feel like we're ready to just move on though and talk about the next game that we have. Is that all right, gentlemen?
Ready when you are.
All right. Off.
I am ready to talk about NYCFC and
Yes.
call them pigeons.
NYCFC. So Chicago Fire are back in Chicago to take on the said Pigeons, as DJ mentioned, who are also coming off a 2-1 loss to Austin after a Jesse Zardes brace. But before that, they've been doing fairly well for themselves. They had a 2-0 victory over Montreal on Wednesday. They had a 4-2 victory over Orlando last Friday. They're currently 5th in the Eastern Conference with a 3-6-1 away record. That's away, so that's decent for away. Alonso Martin.
For reference, I think the Fires is what, like 1-7-1, I think? No.
It's not the best.
Fires is 1-6-4.
So yeah. But yeah, no. So some players to note from there: Alonso Martinez and Santiago Rodriguez. Both of them have 8 goals. I don't know really, apart from Hugo Kuipers, who also has a high goal count for the Fire. And Matt Freese, GK has 86 saves registered this season. So,
and that's not counting, Maxi Morales, who would be up there but has been injured, will be injured for the game on Saturday.
eh,
They've got some other names that people may recognize. James Sands, who's been sort of like a periphery USMNT player, playing in the defensive midfield. I'm trying to think of Thiago Martins. I think has been an effective player for them on the back line this year. He's not a name that you'll hear as much, but I think he's been really one of the better center backs in the league for stretches. At stretches, he's looked a lot more pedestrian.
True.
Tavon Gray, who is I believe is a full Jamaican international now, and has just looked very good for them throughout the course of the season. I think playing at sort of like the right back position.
Yep. And as we mentioned, hopefully if the San Jose result would have been better, this would have brought this last 3 games before the Leagues Cup. It would have been, I guess, a better start to that essentially, because NYCFC, as we mentioned, they're 5th in the Eastern Conference. They have a decent away record. And then afterwards, you're facing off against 2 of the best teams in the league, both of them away, being Cincinnati and Miami. And then all of a sudden, it's Leagues Cup. So there won't be a game at home until beginning of August for the Leagues Cup, and then there won't be a Soldier Field game until Miami at the end of August. So there's
Which it should also be noted, the Fire, once they get back, face NYCFC on August
True.
24th.
at Yankee Stadium. So
is it, or is it is it which of the baseball stadiums is it at? Is it
according to the
there?
Fire, it's at Yankee Stadium. I don't know. It usually depends on with the Yankee schedule. Like I know sometimes depending if there was a rain delay and they have to move the game, then they move it to like Citi Field or something like that. I mean, they're gonna have their own stadium soon in a few years, so they won't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But still, this looks to be a pretty interesting next few weeks with NYCFC and then Cincinnati and then Miami. And then you did mention, Tim, that there is a decent chance to move forward in the Leagues Cup with Sporting Kansas City and then Toluca to at least move forward somewhere.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, I think, closer to the Leagues Cup. But yeah, it's a group that the Fire should think that they can advance out of, and then depending just the luck of the draw, quote unquote, there's some weird things that go on with who the Fire would face out of the group if they finished first or second. I think finishing second automatically sets up the second place team from the group faces the Columbus Crew, which would not be ideal. I think the other side, though, I think that you're in a bracket where you end up, potentially facing Club America again, which we saw how the Fire did with that in the knockouts last year. But either way, it just is a restart. But focusing on the MLS season, if you just pretend that the Leagues Cup didn't exist, which I think we've all got our opinions on that. The Fire's next games are against NYCFC, who again are good this year. It's crazy. There were all these calls to basically put Cushing out, the head coach. They wanted to see him gone. The fans were in protest, and then he silenced the critics, and the team went on a winning streak. They've been okay-ish since, up and down a little bit, but I think they're more or less where they should be in the standings based on the performance. That there have been more ups and downs, but there have been more ups than downs for them. And now NYCFC fans, I think, are looking at the squad and saying, okay, there have been injuries that have held us back a little bit. This is a young squad. There's a lot of talent here, and Cushing is getting the talent to perform, which isn't always a guarantee. So NYCFC twice in the next 5 matches for the Fire. Inter Miami twice in the next 5 matches for the Fire. FC Cincinnati, who are currently on top of the league table. You know, like it. There's just not a lot of relief
Nope.
coming up for the team.
No relief. Nope. None whatsoever. In terms of the last few seasons against NYC, it's been sort of split. You had the Fire winning in 21, you had NYC winning in 22. It was a draw in 23, so it's been kind of even. So in terms of where the needle will tip at this point, of course, there was also the 2020 game that saw them winning 4-3. So also a multi-goal game. But of course, that's a completely different cast of characters that has changed over the past 4 years that the Fire have now played at Soldier Field. So,
well, Fabian Herbert's guest on Jimenez still there.
true.
Is still there. Is there anyone left from the team other than those guys?
Let me check.
Yes, I think there's Tehran.
Tehran didn't he show up in 20? Oh, he did show up in the summer of that year. That's right.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, he was like that random transfer in the middle of the year that everybody was
Also,
like,
Wyatt Omsberg and Brian Gutierrez were both unused subs.
Yeah, they were both on the squad. Yep. All right. Yeah, frankly, it's going to be a rough game. Now, having said that, the one thing the Fire do have going for them, if you look at NYCFC's record, when they basically travel someplace that Acela doesn't take you, they don't do well. So,
what a fun factoid, Tim, that they're not going to do well because the Acela doesn't go here.
It's like, well, I guess like Northeast generally,
Like the Northeast corridor,
but like in general, like they do well against teams from like the Northeast. They've had some other results, but like a lot of them really have been like, like they beat DC, like they beat Charlotte, they beat the Revs, like like they had the one random win against San Jose, but like everyone was beating San Jose at that point. Everyone beats San Jose except the Fire, but like they go to Columbus, they don't do well. Like so hey, we're not in the Northeast. Fire have a chance.
I guess. Do we want to get some, predictions into how well this will do?
I predicted there will be at least one goal scored.
But for which side? It is unknown.
I refuse to answer that question.
Okay. Well, I mean, low key, it also felt. I feel the same, where it's going to be 1-0 either way. I also thought 1-1 could be a possibility. It's going to be a bit more closer, I guess, with the Fire back on home soil, with Frank Klobas back in front of the dugout. So I feel like it's going to be a bit closer, but yeah, no, something needs to switch from whatever happened in San Jose. I almost said Saint Jose.
Saint Joseph.
Whatever happened in
completely.
Whatever happened in Saint Joseph.
What is it in Polish? What's Saint Joseph in Polish?
Święty Józef.
There we go.
Whatever happened in Święty Józef over in Northern California needs to be left there, and just bring something back on the lakefront because that's the last home game of July, weirdly enough, and it feels like we're only in the beginning of July, or sort of we're that weird. It would be around that weird midpoint of July, and it's already the last home game. Curse you, MLS schedule makers, for how weird the summer schedule is, but it is what it is. So,
well, it's also the Fire and Soldier Field not having availability in the summer and stuff like that. But yeah, it's so bizarre having 3 home games between June 1st and the end of July. Like, wild.
Yeah, and then we have one in August. Well, I mean, if you count, one Soldier Field, one in August, and then you have one SeatGeek. Or more in SeatGeek, depending on how far the Fire make it.
Yep. So I'm gonna predict 2-1. I don't hate the idea of it being a 1-0 game. I just sort of feel like the way Hugo Kuipers and Marin Haile-Selassie have been performing, like they probably have a goal in them at least every couple of games. They obviously didn't get one last week, so saying that they'll stay off the score sheet again, I don't know. Like, I think they deserve a goal. I just, but if the Fire bring the amount of energy they do, like they need to have what is that? Is it Celsius? Is that the sponsor for MLS?
Yes, the
energy drinks?
Celsius energy. Well, I know that's like the stoppage time sponsor.
I love that sponsor that Celsius is the energy drink sponsor in a league that has a team named Red Bull. Like that just is
Yeah,
chef's
it's
kiss.
funny. I mean, that's sort of like how that reminds me of when Spurs were set to take RB Leipzig. They signed a deal with Monster literally right before that game. So I guess it's sort of like that. A
Yeah.
lot of sponsorship, funny, or how Home Depot sponsors the substitution camera, or like there's a sponsor whenever there's yellow cards. I've noticed now. I don't know what it is. There's just a lot of sponsorships flowing
Man,
around.
Posty
Oh, you
should
have
grab that.
Portillo's for the corner kicks. You finish Frank. Whenever a corner kick happens, you always hear Redline yelling "Finish Frank." That's always funny.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. So
See,
yeah,
we
2-1
have good
my
times here,
prediction.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it, like, look, not so many games left at Soldier Field this year. So if you want to go out and see the Fire at Soldier Field, like this is one of the chances to do it.
Especially
It's
while
just
it's
as
still warm
unfortunate that it
and
feels
still
like,
cheap.
yeah, it's unfortunate that it feels like there was really, not as much energy going into the match as there would have been if the Fire had managed to win a winnable game.
All right. So I predicted. What did I predict? I think I predicted 2-1.
I think you said 1-0.
1-0? Okay, so
Yeah,
I
you said
predict
1-0.
1-0. DJ predicts 1-1. You predict 2-1. So
I predict nothing except that there will be at
Okay.
least one goal scored.
that's still a prediction.
We're
All
putting
right.
you down as 7-5.
Yeah, swinging. Love that
Exactly.
for us. All right. This has been a bit of a quicker. I want to just say like it's been a shorter episode, bit more fast paced. I feel like that energy is just sort of everywhere not there. So yeah. So thank you as always to listening to the Bonfire. If you're not already, like every time, I have to remind you guys to follow MIR97 as well as MIR97 Pods on Twitter, menandred97.com if you want to read all the fun articles that we have up there. And I feel like we can't just end it here. DJ, remember when we used to do questions of the day? Could you just give us us a
Yes.
question of the day?
Let me think real quick. How do we want to do this? Do we want to do video games? Do we want to do joking, or do we want to do like randomly weird serious?
Up to you, man.
Dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice, yeah.
Okay, you know what? Who on the Fire would be in your D&D party, and what would their role be?
So like if we could have if we could have a fire player be in our D&D party, what like what role? Okay. What would
what would their class be?
what would their
What would they
class
be
be?
doing?
Oh my days.
For starters, Kuipers is a barbarian.
Kuiper's barbarian. I do like that. I would say Wyatt Omsberg as a paladin. I'd say that.
That works.
That works. All right.
I mean,
sure.
I feel like Kuipers could also. I don't know.
Oh, what about?
Marin would just be a fight. Marin's just a fighter. He would be a fighter, I think.
Oh man, I'm trying to
So-
think who else.
Shaqiri would be the patch of holding.
I like that.
Rogue. No, I don't know. You know what? I'm thinking about this a little bit, maybe too seriously, but like, is the like Fire's issue they don't have enough people in like the sorcerer, warlock, even like cleric genres?
The Fire lack a
They,
cleric.
they like a cleric. Okay, they have
and
just
a baird, but like, come on, man. or Bard. I don't know why I said Baird.
Did
I don't
you
know why I
say
said Baird.
Baird?
Ah, yes, the local beard.
Tim, we are going to shame
Yeah,
you
it's
for this
fine.
forever now.
Bard.
The bird. I
The
guess-
Bards.
I guess I was about
Alan
to
is
say.
the
I
That would
guess
be
bard.
a hilarious man. Like, too bad there's not like prop D&D teams, because like the Bards would be hilarious, where you had like everyone had to be a bard.
That's funny. All right.
Wouldn't work very well, but you know. Whatever.
No. It would be one bard is enough. I'll say that from personal experience.
I don't know why. Now that I think about it, actually, I get a feeling that Brian Gutierrez probably would actually play a cleric. I don't know why.
Hmm.
He feels like one of those guys that goes back and forth between I'm going to both heal the crap out of you and then beat the crap out of you.
That low key makes sense. Could also be like more of a monk, I guess. Kind of character. Yeah.
Cleric, monk.
Sort of multi-class.
Multi-class.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. We should bring back questions of the day. I know this was always a fun way I would end it. So, all right.
To be fair, we stopped doing it because they ran out of
Oh.
questions. Because they just kept being like,
Yeah.
which Greek god?
Well, I
And
mean,
we kept
hey-
them getting longer.
That's true. If any of our listeners have any good questions of the day, send it our way so we can
That's actually
feature
a
them.
good idea. Like, yeah, we'll make time for the question of the day if we get a good one. Like somebody like tweets us or reaches us via other means.
Yes.
However, we must put in a very big note. We will not be answering questions about where the money is buried.
Or what we did in 1999.
Where are you born?
I pooped my pants.
All right. This is a very great ending to a very great episode. I, as always, Alan the Pole with the Gold, joined by my co-hosts Tim and DJ. And as long as we breathe, hopefully, come on, you men in red.
Come on, you
Let's
in
go
red.
fire.